They didn't exile us with anger. That would have meant we mattered. No, what they gave us was worse. Indifference. I remember the moment the verdict was read. No raised voices. No protests allowed. Just a sterile chamber, polished to perfection, where the High Council spoke as if they were discussing faulty equipment instead of living beings. Subjects deemed incompatible with collective stability will be reassigned beyond the frontier. Reassigned. A clean word. A coward's word. We knew what it meant. Get rid of them. All of them. I stood among thousands as the decree echoed through the chamber. Soldiers without wars, scientists who questioned doctrine, workers who refused to bow, families who didn't fit the mold. We were the friction in their perfect machine. So they removed us. Efficiently. Quietly. Permanently. No riots. No bloodshed. No mess. Just transport ships. I was a commander once. Decorated. Loyal. Stupid enough to believe the system had honor. That belief died the day I refused an order. Fire on the settlement, they told me. Non-compliant civilians. I hesitated. That was all it took. Not refusal. Not rebellion. Hesitation. That single moment branded me defective. And defectives don't get trials. They get erased. The transport ship they shoved us into wasn't built for life. It was built for disposal. Cold metal walls, flickering lights, failing systems. They didn't expect us to survive long enough to complain. Maybe that was the point. No executions. No accountability. Just let the void do the work. We drifted for weeks. Then months. Time lost meaning somewhere between hunger and silence. At first, people tried to organize. Rations were calculated, shifts assigned, systems patched together with whatever scraps we had. Old habits. Military discipline. Hope. That didn't last. Hope is fragile when it isn't fed. The first death came quietly. An elder who simply didn't wake up. No one had the strength to mourn properly. We wrapped him in fabric and released him into space. No words. Just a body disappearing into darkness. Then another. And another. Not violence. Not madness. Just fading. That's what exile really is. Not punishment. Erasure. By the time we crossed into uncharted space, we weren't a community anymore. We were survivors. Barely. The children stopped asking questions. That was the worst part. They adapted faster than the rest of us, accepted the silence, the hunger, the uncertainty. One of them, a small girl with eyes too old for her face, asked me once, "Commander, is this what the end feels like?" I didn't have an answer. So I lied. "No," I told her. "The end is louder." She nodded like she understood. She didn't. Neither did I. Until the signal came. At first, we thought it was interference. The ship's systems were barely holding together, and ghost signals weren't uncommon. But this one repeated. Consistent. Structured. Intentional. Identified vessel, entering restricted space, respond or be intercepted. The words crackled through the speakers, distorted but unmistakable. Alive. Someone was out here. A murmur spread through the ship. Weak voices, cautious hope. Some thought it was rescue. Others feared it was worse. I felt something colder. Dread. Because civilizations don't build outposts this far out without a reason. And reasons like that are rarely kind. "Patch it through," I ordered. The comm officer hesitated. "Sir, we don't know who." "Patch it through." Static filled the bridge. Then the voice came again, clearer this time. "Unidentified vessel, you are trespassing in protected territory. Power down your engines and prepare for escort." The tone wasn't hostile. But it wasn't welcoming either. Professional. Controlled. Dangerous. I stepped closer to the console. "This is a civilian transport," I said, the lie tasting bitter. "We are not a threat." A pause. Then, "You don't look like civilians." The response was immediate, sharp, observant. Whoever they were watching us closely. I glanced at the external feed. And that's when I saw them. Ships. Dozens at first. Then hundreds. Emerging from the void like predators slipping out of shadow. They weren't sleek like council vessels. No polished hulls or elegant lines. These were brutal. Angular plating. Exposed weapon systems. Scars etched into their surfaces. Actual scars, like they'd been through battles and never bothered to hide it. This wasn't a fleet. It was a graveyard that refused to stay dead. One ship broke formation and moved closer. Larger than the rest. Slower. Deliberate. The kind of movement that didn't need to rush. Because it already knew it could win. A new voice cut in. Different. Calmer. Unidentified transport. It said, almost conversational. You're drifting, your life support is failing, and half your hull looks like it's held together by regret. A faint pause. Want to explain how you got here? There was something in that voice. Not cruelty. Not arrogance. Something worse. Experience. I took a breath. We were exiled, I said. No point hiding it. Silence followed. Long enough to make my skin crawl. Then, yeah, the voice replied softly. That tracks. Another pause. Anyone chasing you? The question hit like a strike. No, I answered. They don't chase what they throw away. A low sound came through the calm. A chuckle. Dark. Humorless. Yeah, the voice said. We've heard that one before. I frowned. What does that mean? More silence. Then the tone shifted, subtle, but unmistakable. Decisive. All right, the voice said. Here's what's going to happen. Coordinates flashed onto our screen. Power down your weapons, whatever's left of them, and drift to those coordinates. I hesitated. Trusting strangers out here was suicide. But so was doing nothing. Why? I asked. Another pause. Shorter this time. Then, because, the voice said, quieter now. No one deserves to die like that. The words settled over the bridge. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Real. I swallowed. Who are you? For a moment, I thought they wouldn't answer. Then the voice came back. Simple. Unadorned. Human. The word meant nothing to me. But the way they said it? That meant everything. Before I could respond, the signals shifted. More voices in the background. Movement. Orders being issued. Then one final transmission. Docking corridor will be pressurized when you arrive, the human said. Med teams are standing by. A beat. And hey. I waited. Try not to fall apart before we get a look at you. The channel went dead. I stood there, staring at the coordinates. At the ships surrounding us. At the unknown. Behind me, the survivors waited. Silent. Broken. Watching. What do we do? Someone whispered. I exhaled slowly. Then I gave the only order left. We go. Because for the first time since exile, the void wasn't empty anymore. And something out there, something dangerous, had just decided we were worth saving. We expected cages. That's the truth of it. When you've been discarded by your own kind, you stop believing in mercy. You assume every outstretched hand is just another way to measure your throat. So when the docking clamps locked onto our dying ship, and the outer doors began to open, we braced. For soldiers. For restraints. For the quiet, efficient cruelty we knew so well. Instead, warm air rushed in. Clean. Filtered. Alive. And then came the humans. No weapons raised. No armor gleaming. Just people in worn uniforms and patched gear, moving fast with purpose. Easy, easy, we've got you, one of them said as they caught a collapsing worker before he hit the floor. Another was already scanning the room with a handheld device. Severe malnutrition across the board. Get medical teams in here now. Water first, someone else called out. Small amounts don't shock their systems. It didn't make sense. It felt wrong. Kindness always does when you haven't seen it in a long time. A human medic approached me. Younger than I expected. Eyes sharp, movements efficient. You're still standing, she noted, glancing at a flickering display on her wrist. That makes you lucky or stubborn. Former military, I said automatically. She snorted. Yeah, that explains it. Come on, Commander, let's not make me carry you too. I can walk. Great, she replied, already turning away. Then keep up. I did. Because I didn't know what else to do. They moved us in waves. Not rushed, not careless, controlled. Every action deliberate. Every step coordinated without needing to shout. This wasn't chaos. This was experience. They'd done this before. That realization sat heavy in my chest. How many others had they pulled out of the dark? And what had put them there? The station interior hit like a shock. It wasn't pristine like council structures. No polished surfaces or sterile perfection. It was lived in. Scars ran along the walls, burn marks, welded patches, mismatched panels that didn't quite fit but held anyway. Lights flickered in places. Pipes rattled faintly overhead. And everywhere, people. Humans. Different ages, different builds, different expressions. Some watched us with curiosity. Others with something deeper. Recognition. That unsettled me more than anything. They weren't looking at strangers. They were looking at reflections. I was led into a medical bay where rows of our people were already being treated. Nutrient lines, stabilizers, soft voices guiding them back from the edge. The small girl who had asked me about the end sat on a bed, clutching a container of water like it might vanish if she blinked. A human knelt beside her. You don't have to drink it all at once, he said gently. Take your time. She nodded. Slowly. Trusting. That shouldn't have been possible. Commander. I turned. The voice was deeper. Older. A man approached, tall, broad-shouldered, his uniform less patched but no less worn. Gray threaded through his beard and his eyes. His eyes had seen things. The kind of things that don't leave. You look like you've got questions, he said. More than answers, I replied. He gave a faint smile. Good. Means you're still thinking. Who are you? I asked. He extended a hand. Hail. I looked at it for a moment. Hands had signed our exile. Hands had pointed us toward death. But this one? This one waited. I took it. Commander Reth. His grip was firm. Grounded. All right, Commander, Hale said. Let's get something straight before your brain ties itself in knots. I raised an eyebrow. You're safe here. The words landed, wrong. Not because they sounded false. Because they sounded impossible. Why? I asked. Hale didn't answer immediately. He glanced around the medical bay, watching his people work, watching mine recover. Then he looked back at me. Because someone should have done it for us, he said simply. That again. The same answer. It irritated me. You keep saying that. I pressed. What does it mean? Hale exhaled through his nose, like he was debating how much to say. Means, he said finally, we've been on the wrong end of a civilized decision before. I felt something shift. You were exiled? Not exactly. His smile turned thin. We were managed. That doesn't sound better. It wasn't. Silence settled between us for a moment. Then I asked the question that had been gnawing at me since we docked. What do you want from us? Hale blinked. Want? Yes, I said. Labor. Loyalty. Information. There's always a cost. He studied me like I'd just said something profoundly strange. Then he chuckled. Yeah, he said. There usually is. My stomach tightened. Here it comes. The cost. Hale continued, is that you get back on your feet. I frowned. That's it. For now. That doesn't make sense. Welcome to human policy, he replied dryly. I shook my head. No. There's always a long game. Hale's eyes flickered, just for a second. Yeah, he said quietly. There is. I leaned forward slightly. And? He met my gaze. And the long game, he said, is making sure no one gets to do this to you again. The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were aggressive. Because they were personal. You don't even know us, I said. Don't need to, Hale replied. I know the type that throws people away. He gestured toward the viewport at the far end of the bay. Beyond it, the black stretched endlessly. And I know what happens when they realize what they lost. A chill ran down my spine. You think they'll come? I said. Hale didn't hesitate. They always do. Why? Because empires hate loose ends. I turned back to the room. To my people. Recovering. Breathing. Living. They didn't chase us, I said. They didn't care enough. Hale's expression hardened. That's not care, he said. That's arrogance. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. They didn't chase you because they didn't think they needed to. A pause. But now? He nodded toward the station. Now you're not alone. The implication settled heavily. And that changes things? I murmured. Hale's lips twitched. Yeah, he said. It really does. The days that followed blurred together. Food. Rest. Medical treatment. But more than that, something none of us were prepared for. Inclusion. They didn't isolate us. Didn't segregate us. They brought us in. Slowly, carefully, but undeniably. Engineers among us were invited to assist with repairs. Former soldiers, like me, were offered training access, not as recruits, but as participants. Children were given space to play. To laugh. To be children again. It was disarming. Suspiciously so. I found Hale again a week later, standing on a platform overlooking a hangar filled with ships in various states of repair. You're integrating us, I said. He nodded. That the plan? Why? He didn't look at me this time. Because you're not broken, he said. You were just inconvenient. The word hit like a blade. Yeah, I said bitterly. That sounds familiar. Hale finally turned. Good, he said. Then you already know the truth. And that is? He gestured around the hangar, at the ships, the people, the constant motion. This place? He said. It's built on inconvenient people. I followed his gaze. Every scar on those ships. Every patch on those walls. Every human moving with quiet purpose. None of them looked like they belonged in a perfect society. And suddenly, it clicked. This isn't just a station, I said slowly. Hale's grin returned. Nope. What is it then? He folded his arms. A collection point. For what? His eyes hardened. For everyone the galaxy decided it didn't need. I felt the weight of that. A place like this didn't exist by accident. It was built, maintained, defended. Why? I asked. Hale's answer was immediate. Because someone has to. The alarm came 3 days later. Low. Controlled. But unmistakable. I was already moving before the second tone sounded. Old instincts snapping back into place. When I reached the command deck, the room was alive with motion, but not panic. Never panic. Humans didn't panic. They prepared. Hale stood at the center, eyes locked on the main display. I followed his gaze. And felt my blood run cold. Ships. Dozens. Then hundreds. Sleek. Pristine. Perfect. The Council. They found us, I said. Hale nodded once. Yeah. A transmission request flashed. Demanding. Arrogant. Of course it was. Hale gestured to the comms officer. Put them through. The channel opened, and the familiar voice of authority filled the room. Unregistered human faction, the envoy said, every word dripping with superiority. You are harboring council property. Return the exiled subjects immediately and submit for inspection. Property. The word burned. I stepped forward before I could stop myself. We're not. Hale's hand came up, stopping me. Not harsh. Just firm. Easy, Commander, he said quietly. Then he stepped forward and answered. You're not getting them back. The envoy paused, clearly not used to being interrupted. You misunderstand, he said coldly. Those beings belong to the Council. Hale leaned slightly toward the console. No, he said. They don't? The temperature in the room seemed to drop. You will comply, the envoy continued, voice tightening, or be removed. Hale exhaled slowly. And for the first time since I'd met him, he smiled like a man who had been waiting for this moment. Yeah, he said. That's what I was hoping you'd say. The channel cut. The alarms shifted. Higher. Sharper. Combat readiness. I looked at him. You expected this. Hale didn't deny it. Counted on it, he said. My stomach tightened. You let them come. No, he corrected calmly. We made sure they couldn't ignore us. I stared at him. At the calm. At the certainty. At the quiet, controlled fury beneath it all. What are you going to do? I asked. Hale glanced at the fleet assembling on the display. Then back at me. And for a brief moment, there was something almost gentle in his expression. Something they'll remember, he said. Then he turned away. Battle stations. The Council expected obedience. That was their first mistake. The second? They expected fear. What they got instead was a lesson. The command deck fell silent as the enemy fleet tightened formation, clean lines, perfect symmetry, every ship in its assigned place like pieces on a board that had never known defeat. I recognized that formation. I had used that formation. It was designed for dominance, not war. For intimidation, not resistance. They think we'll fold, I muttered. Hale didn't look at me. Good, he said. Makes this quicker. His hand hovered over the command console, not hesitating, just waiting for the exact moment. The Council ships powered weapons. Bright. Predictable. Disciplined. Everything about them screamed control. Human ships? They didn't move at all. Not yet. They just sat there. Drifting. Silent. Like predators waiting for the right twitch. Why aren't we? I started. Timing, Hale cut in. His eyes flicked across the display, tracking vectors, distances, firing arcs. Let them commit first. The Council envoy's voice cut back in, sharp and impatient. Final warning. Return Council property or be destroyed. Property. That word again. I felt my jaw tighten. Hale didn't even bother responding. He just gave a small nod. Now. The first shock came from us. No warning. No dramatic build-up. Just a single, violent line of light tearing across the void. A rail strike. I barely saw it fire. One moment, nothing. The next, a Council cruiser ceased to exist. Not exploded. Not damaged. Erased. A clean hole punched straight through its core at relativistic speed. The ship buckled inward like reality itself rejected it, then collapsed into a silent cloud of debris. The formation broke instantly. Confusion rippled through their ranks. They weren't used to this. They weren't used to losing the initiative. What? The envoy's voice cracked, just for a second. Return fire! Return fire! Too late. Human ships moved. And everything I thought I knew about combat shattered. They didn't advance in lines. Didn't hold position. They scattered. No, they hunted. Small attack craft launched in swarms, darting between the larger ships with erratic, almost reckless patterns that no targeting system could predict. "They're out of formation," I said, stunned. "They're free," Hale corrected. "Missiles fired. But they weren't like anything I'd seen before. They didn't detonate on impact. They latched on, burrowing into hull plating like parasites. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Council ships started exploding from the inside out. Fire blossomed through their cores, ripping through decks, systems, lives, before venting into space in violent, jagged bursts. "Internal sabotage?" I whispered. "Smart payloads," Hale said. "They adapt once they're inside." I stared at him. "You're using thinking weapons." He gave a thin smile. "They're using us." Another volley of rail fire tore through the enemy fleet, each shot precise, devastating, impossible to counter at that range. The Council ships tried to regroup, tried to re-establish formation. But the humans wouldn't let them. They were already inside the formation now, cutting it apart from within. "Boarding pods deployed," someone called out. I blinked. "You're boarding them? In the middle of battle?" Hale shot back. "Best time to do it." On the display, I saw it, small, armored pods slamming into Council hulls at high speed, punching through outer plating and embedding themselves deep inside. Moments later, signals inside those ships went dark. One by one. Like lights being switched off. "They're taking them from the inside," I said. Hale nodded. "Or just making sure no one's left to fly them." There was no hesitation. No mercy. This wasn't a battle for territory. This was a message written in fire. The Council envoy returned, voice no longer controlled, now frantic. "You are engaging in unlawful aggression. Stand down immediately." Hale actually laughed. A low, humorless sound. "Unlawful?" he repeated. "That's rich." Another Council battleship split apart under concentrated fire. "Where was that law?" Hale continued, voice turning cold. "When you threw them into the dark?" No answer. Only static. Only screams bleeding through broken channels. The Council fleet was collapsing. Not retreating. Collapsing. Because they didn't know how to retreat. Empires like theirs weren't built with that instinct. They were built to win. Or die. And today, they were learning the second half of that equation. A Council cruiser attempted to break away, engines flaring as it tried to escape the chaos. It didn't make it far. A human capital ship accelerated straight toward it. "No," I said, realizing too late. "They're going to impact." The human ship rammed through the cruiser like a blade, tearing it in half in a catastrophic explosion that lit the void like a newborn star. The human vessel didn't stop. It kept going. Hull burning. Systems failing. Still fighting. "Why would they do that?" I demanded. Hale's answer was simple. "Because it works." I turned to him, something like horror creeping into my voice. "That ship is gone." "Yeah," he said. "And so are they." The difference in perspective hit me like a punch. To the Council, losses were unacceptable. To the humans? Losses were accounted for. Used. Weaponized. Another explosion rocked the battlefield. Another Council ship gone. Their numbers were dropping fast now. Too fast. "This isn't just defense," I said again, quieter this time. Hale didn't deny it. "No," he said. "It isn't." He leaned forward slightly, watching the destruction unfold with a focus that bordered on obsession. "This is correction." The envoy's signal flickered back one last time, barely holding together. "You're animals!" he shouted. "Savages!" Hale tilted his head. "Yeah," he said. "We get that a lot." A human strike craft streaked past the Council flagship, releasing a cluster of charges that adhered to its hull like metallic spores. For a heartbeat. Nothing. Then the ship imploded. Crushed inward as its own systems turned against it, gravity wells collapsing in on themselves in a controlled nightmare of physics. Silence followed. Not real silence. There were still explosions, still movement, but something deeper. The kind of silence that comes when a force realizes it's already dead. The Council fleet broke. Ships scattered in every direction, abandoning formation entirely now, desperate to escape. "Should we pursue?" one of the human officers asked. Hale watched the fleeing ships. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, "No." I blinked. "No?" He shook his head. "Let them run." "Why?" I demanded. "You can finish this." He looked at me then. Really looked. And there was something in his eyes that made my blood run cold. "Because," he said quietly, "someone needs to tell the story." I followed his gaze back to the fleeing ships. To the survivors. The witnesses. Understanding dawned slowly. Heavy. Unavoidable. This wasn't about wiping them out. It was about making sure everyone else knew what happened when they tried. The last council signal cut out. The battlefield went still. Wreckage drifted. Fire burned in silent, broken arcs. Hundreds of ships, gone. Just like that. I exhaled slowly, my hands trembling slightly. "It's over," I said. Hale didn't respond right away. He just kept watching the void. Then, finally, "For them," he said. A pause. Then he turned away. "For now." And something in his tone told me this wasn't the end of anything. It was just the beginning. The battlefield didn't feel like victory. It felt like aftermath. There's a difference most civilizations never learn to recognize until it's too late. Victory is celebration. Aftermath is silence. And space, cold, endless space, made that silence feel absolute. The wreckage of the Council fleet drifted like broken memories across the void. Whole fragments spun slowly, catching distant starlight like dying embers. No cheering. No parades. Just the steady hum of human engines cooling down after violence done too efficiently to feel heroic. I stood on the observation deck longer than I should have. Watching. Trying to understand what I had just witnessed. Entire fleets don't vanish in an hour. Not unless something fundamentally changes the rules of war. And the humans, they hadn't just changed them. They had ignored them. A soft voice behind me broke the silence. "You always stare like that after your first one." I turned. Hale. Arms folded, expression unreadable. "My first what?" I asked. He tilted his head slightly toward the void. "Your first time watching an empire realize it's not the biggest thing in the room anymore." I swallowed. "That wasn't a battle," I said quietly. "No," he agreed. "It wasn't." I looked at him more carefully now. The calm in his posture wasn't relief. It wasn't pride. It was familiarity. "How many times have you done this?" I asked. Hale didn't answer immediately. That hesitation told me everything. "Enough," he said finally. A pause. Then softer. "Too many." Something about that answer sat wrong with me. Not because it was vague. Because it wasn't dramatic enough for what we had just seen. People who fight wars like that don't speak like heroes. They speak like survivors of a system that never stopped demanding more. The station shifted slightly, thrusters adjusting, stabilizing after combat maneuvers. Life resumed around us with unsettling normalcy. Engineers already moving to repair minor damage. Med teams checking casualties. Reports being filed. Efficient. Routine. Like none of this was extraordinary. "How are you so calm?" I asked. Hale gave a faint smile. "You get used to noise," he said. "Eventually, silence feels louder." I looked back at the void. At the drifting council remains. "They'll come again," I said. It wasn't a question. Hale nodded. "Yeah. More ships." "Yeah. More fleets." Another nod. "Yeah." I turned toward him sharply. "And you're fine with that?" That got a reaction. Not anger. Not surprise. Just something heavier. Tired understanding. I'm not fine with it, he said. A beat. I'm prepared for it. The distinction mattered more than I wanted it to. I crossed my arms. You provoked them, I said. Hale didn't deny it. We stopped hiding, he corrected. That's the same thing. No, he said firmly. It's not. He stepped closer now, voice lowering. Let me ask you something, Commander. I didn't like where this was going. But I listened. After you were exiled, he said, how long do you think it would have taken for them to decide you were dead? I frowned. They already did. Hale nodded. Exactly. A pause. Now tell me, he continued, what happens when something they marked as dead walks back into the light and starts saving others? I didn't answer. Because I understood. Too well. They don't tolerate contradictions, I said quietly. No, Hale agreed. They erased them. Silence stretched between us. Then I asked the question that had been growing since the first shot was fired. This station, this fleet, it isn't just protection, is it? Hale's expression didn't change. But something in his eyes sharpened. No, he said. It's a warning system. For what? He gestured outward. At the stars. At the wreckage. At everything that had just happened. For when they come back with more certainty than fear. That didn't comfort me. It should have. It didn't. Because I realized something worse. This wasn't the end of their response, I said. Hale nodded once. Nope. It was the beginning of their escalation. Another nod. Yeah. I exhaled slowly. You knew that would happen. Yes. And you still brought us here. Hale met my eyes directly. And left you where you were? He countered. That hit harder than I expected. I looked away first. The station lights dimmed slightly as external systems recalibrated. Damage reports filtered across screens. Casualty counts. Resource usage. Fleet integrity. Numbers. Always numbers. But behind those numbers, there were people. Living people. People like mine. People like his. You said no one deserves to die like that, I said quietly. Hale nodded. I meant it. Then why does it feel like we just started something bigger than all of us? For the first time, Hale didn't respond immediately. He walked to the viewport beside me. Watched the void for a long time. Then he said, Because you did. I frowned. I did. He nodded slightly. When you survived exile, he said. When you kept going. When you didn't disappear like they expected. A pause. You became proof. I didn't like that word. Proof of what? Hale turned to me. That they're not gods. The words landed heavy. Not dramatic. Not poetic. Just true. And gods don't like being corrected, he added. I felt a chill run through me. So what now? I asked. Hale looked back at the void again. At the empty space where the Council fleet had been. No, he said slowly. We wait for the next mistake. I narrowed my eyes. That's not a plan. He almost smiled. It's the oldest one there is. I shook my head. This will escalate. They'll bring more fleets. More systems. They'll adapt. Hale interrupted. I stopped. He continued. So will we. That part wasn't said like hope. It was said like inevitability. Like gravity. A new voice cut through the comms. Commander Hale. A technician called. We're picking up long-range transmissions from retreating Council vessels. They're broadcasting the engagement across multiple sectors. Hale didn't look surprised. Good, he said. I frowned. Good? He nodded once. Now everyone knows. That was when I finally understood. This was never just about us, I said slowly. Hale shook his head. No. He stepped closer to the console, watching incoming data streams ripple across the screen. This was about reminding the galaxy what happens when you throw people away. A pause. And what those people become when they stop accepting it. I looked at the reports again. The destroyed fleet. The fleeing survivors. The transmission spreading like wildfire. And I realized something uncomfortable. We weren't just rescued. We were being positioned. Not as weapons. Not as soldiers. But as a message that moved. A living contradiction to every empire that ever believed exile was the end of a story. You're going to keep fighting them, I said quietly. Hale didn't deny it. We're going to keep existing, he corrected. And they'll keep trying to erase you. A nod. Yes. I looked at him sharply. And you're okay with that cycle? Hale's answer came without hesitation. No. A pause. I'm just done pretending it won't happen. Silence returned again. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This one wasn't empty. It was full of expectation. Of inevitability. Of something already moving beyond the horizon. Behind us, the station continued to function. Alive. Scarred. Unyielding. And for the first time since exile, I understood the real difference between the Council and the humans. The Council feared disorder. The humans had learned to survive it. And survival. Survival has a habit of becoming something far more dangerous. Hale spoke again, softer this time. They'll come back, he said. I nodded. Yes. He looked at me. And next time? I met his gaze. And for the first time since everything began, I didn't feel like something discarded. I felt like something waiting. Next time, I said. They won't think we're alone. Hale's faint smile returned. Good, he said. Then we're finally doing it right.